Hello guys, I'm Tristan Lambert. Today, I'm going to be making a scary story tier list. So I'm going to be ranking all of these beings and entities here in terms of how powerful they are. So let's not waste any more time and get right into ranking them now. First off, I'm going to kick it off with the dealer. So if you don't know who the dealer is a very powerful drug lord, an extremely powerful being that can break down walls, is the most powerful drug lord of all time. Anyone who's dared try and stop the dealer has been killed by the dealer. He's a little bit bigger, but a lot more powerful than any other drug lord. He was born in 1943 in Colombia, and he does a lot of illegal items and drugs and sells them and stuff like that. Apart from that, that's pretty much what he does. So where does he fit on this tier list here? Well, I'm going to be putting him into D tier, and here's why. 1, he isn't a mythical being. In fact, he's only around 79 years old as of now, which isn't actually that old at all. You'll soon find out that a lot of these beings here, and entities as well, are much more powerful than the dealer. If he got into a fight with a lot of these characters here, he would lose on the spot. Now don't get me wrong, he could still easily kill any one of us, but we're just normal human beings. The dealer is a powerful being, and the beings and entities down here, some of them, are simply just another level. Next up, Wanker Chief. Now, similarly to the dealer, but not quite, Wanker Chief goes around killing anyone who dares attack any posh twats. If they hear them say the phrase, Wanker Chief, that means your life is in great danger, and Wanker Chief will be coming after you. He carries a pistol and shoots you with it. I think he's been around for about 100 or so years, maybe a bit longer, maybe a bit shorter. So he's somewhat there with mythical being status, but I'm also going to be putting him into D tier. And the reason I'm not putting him into a higher tier, like C or B, it's because he's not quite there yet. He's not quite at the level of a mythical being. And all he's really protecting are posh twats. And there isn't really many of them around anyways. So for that reason, he's going into D tier. And not only that, if the dealer and Wanker Chief got into a fight with each other, I reckon the dealer would come out on top. Just because the dealer has a lot more raw power than Wanker Chief does, as the dealer can literally break down walls with his bare hands. Literally trumps wall, actually. While Wanker Chief would not be able to do that. He could kill any one of us, but if we run away from any posh twat situations, he likely won't even chase us. Now, the next one I'm going to be talking about here is Money Guy. Now, Money Guy is probably the most interesting being out of all of these beings and entities here. And the reason being is that he doesn't actually physically attack anyone, unlike all the other beings and entities here. He gets his power from controlling all the money in the world, and that actually makes him extremely powerful. He could wipe out any rich man within an instant, make them starve to death. And lower grade beings and entities would suffer that fate as well, because they still need to use money to buy things. However, most beings, including D, maybe even E tier beings and entities, wouldn't really be affected by Money Guy. But because of the grip Money Guy has in the world, and the power he can hold over us, I'm going to have to put him into C tier, simply because he poses a real threat to us. However, he's not going into any higher than C tier, because he's simply not that powerful. He's powerful to us, but not to other beings and entities. And to get B, A, or even God tier, you have to be powerful in all aspects. Against us, humans, against other beings and entities, against anything, really. Money Guy is only really powerful against us. If I was ranking him just based off that, he'd be up in A. But other beings and entities are unaffected by him at all. He can do 0 damage to them. And even Wanker Chief would probably come out on top if these two got into a fight with each other. He's more of a materialistic power guy. But for that reason, he's going into C tier. Next up, Buddy Bud Bud. So, Buddy Bud Bud is an overweight Indian being. And he is also a mythical being. He's been around for a couple 100 years. He kills anyone who dares smack or harm an Indian person by smacking him to death in and around the anus. And it's an extremely painful way to die. In fact, his smacks may be even considered similar to Big Tim's, though much less powerful. However, Buddy Bud Bud isn't the most powerful being to ever exist, but he is quite powerful. You unlikely will be killed by him unless if you go into India or something and, like I said, harm an Indian person. But once he's after you, that's it. You will be killed by him because there's no way to stop him. He's a guardian in a way. He's a mythical being, been around for a couple 100 years. So for that reason, I'm putting him into C tier. He doesn't get B tier or A tier because he's not ridiculously powerful. And now I want to talk about a classic. Senorita. Now, Senorita is actually quite similar to Buddy Bud Bud in a way. He protects Mexican people, and he will kill anyone who dares harm or torment a Mexican person, usually by shooting them. So being attacked or killed by Senorita may not be as bad as being killed by Buddy Bud Bud, but it's usually the same story. If you haven't ran away, Senorita will kill you, and sometimes he will even chase you if you haven't ran away. Unlike the dealer or Wanker Chief, who will probably just hang around where you ran away from. Senorita is also a mythical being that's been around for a couple 100 years. I would say Buddy Bud Bud is a little bit more powerful than Senorita. But Senorita still deserves C tier. Girthman. Now we begin to talk about some pretty powerful beings here. Girthman is that 40-foot tall being that has girth as his power. He's not a god or girth god in any way, but he does have access to the power of girth, which he carries around in his girth stick. He always wears a blue suit with brown boots. He's an extremely powerful being. He'd wipe the floor with most beings and entities, and he would easily kill any one of us if he wanted to. And Girthman is actually got many friends known as Girthmen. They're almost like angels in a way to Girth God. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting him into B tier. He doesn't get A tier because you soon find out that A tier beings are just another level of power that even I can't describe it. The Jolly Hog! Now, the Jolly Hog is an interesting one here. He's the being that will win any war and always decides the outcome of any war or battle that happens. He will always emerge victorious in any battle he fights in. And he is immune to cannon fire and all kinds of projectiles because they just bounce off of his belly. He's been around for 60,000 years, which is a long time. However, like I mentioned in the story itself, beings such as boyman would literally wipe the floor with the Jolly Hog quite easily. So for that reason, I'm going to be only putting him into C tier. However, he is one of the more powerful C tier beings. Arseman! Now, this guy, quite a recent story of mine. However, he's the being that shoves you up his arse and gives you an extremely painful death. He poses a real big threat to us. To other beings, not quite as much, but he is still a powerful being, even though he is hated by literally everyone and everything on the face of the planet and even in the universe and multiverse. But that doesn't stop him from being as powerful as he is. In fact, if he wasn't powerful, he would have been wiped out a long time ago. So for that reason, I'm putting him into B tier. Again, he doesn't get A tier because he's not so powerful that I can't describe it. He's powerful, just not A tier powerful. Next up, the Leecher. The entity that leeches off your Wi-Fi and internet, and is a powerful creature, been around for 40 years, probably much, much longer than that, and will kill you by electrocuting and burning you to death and stabbing you with his claws, ripping you apart with his circular teeth. An extremely powerful entity. However, the Leecher isn't ridiculously powerful. He would eventually be killed if enough people teamed up and started attacking him. And he's not immune to, like, bullets and cannon fire and stuff like that. He can handle a lot of them, sure, but he is not completely immune. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting him into C tier. He's not going as low as D tier because he's still very powerful and has been around for quite some time, like Buddy Budbud and Henry Senorita. His power is on par with those two beings. Jolly Hog, however, is more powerful than him because Jolly Hog would simply be immune to any of the Leecher's attacks. But the Leecher can kill anyone quite easily, any human anyways, a bit like Buddy Budbud and Henry Senorita can. However, the Leech, I would say, is a bit more powerful than the two because he's more likely to attack one of us, as the Leecher can be anywhere at any time. Verbuta. Now, this is the entity that you call in the mirror, similar to Bloody Mary, but a lot scarier and a lot worse than Bloody Mary. I'm going to be putting Verbuta into E tier, and here's why. 1. The only way you really be attacked by Verbuta is if you summon him. If you don't summon him in the mirror, you'll be fine. And other beings will not be castrated by him at all. They would wipe the floor with him if they got into a fight with him, like Jolly Hog, the Leecher, Henry, Senorita, and obviously Big Tim. However, any normal human would be killed and castrated by Verbuta. He's one of the weakest beings on the list here. However, the reason I'm not putting him into F tier is because he's still a physical entity. And there's a very small chance that you'll be attacked by him without doing the ritual. Wide Men. Now, Wide Men is a group of beings here, and they're very, very, very powerful. They'll stretch you wide and kill you just so you'll become one of them. And they're very tall as well, from what I've heard. And because they're a group of beings, rather than a singular being, that makes them even more powerful and a bigger threat to us. However, they're not B tier powerful or A tier powerful, so I'm going to be putting them into C tier. The reason being is a B tier being would literally just vaporize them or kill them very quickly on the spot. Girthman has got girth, he could just girth them out like that, for example, and you soon find out that the other B tier beings that are going to be on this list will be able to do a lot of damage to any of these beings down here. So here's how I'm essentially ranking them. Any being in a tier, like say B tier, any B tier being will be able to wipe the floor with any being in the tier below. Any being in the same tier as each other, it depends. Usually, the further left I'd put them on the list, the more powerful they are. But anyone could really come out on top if all these beings in the same tier fought each other. Boss Man. Now, Boss Man is similar to the dealer in the way he runs all the mafias in the world. The dealer runs all the drugs in the world. They're very similar to each other. So for that reason, I'm also going to be putting him into D tier. I'm also going to do Boss Man Reno. He's a little bit smaller, but a lot more powerful than Boss Man. Which means he's actually not that much more powerful if we're talking about this tier list here. So they both go into D tier. Boss Man and Boss Man Reno. For the same reason as the dealer. They're powerful beings, but they're in no way mythical beings such as Buddy Bud or Henry Senorita. Which actually brings me to the next point, which is the fence manager of 68. Now, the fence manager of 68 is interesting. Probably one of the more interesting beings on this list. The reason being is that he isn't alive like all these other beings are. In fact, he is a spirit now. He died in 1968 at the age of 100. He was born in 1868. Now, it's quite easy to piss this being off. You just have to spiritually take one of his fences, whether that be by getting offended by a joke or simply just thinking about fences for too long. And he will come after you, and he will find you, and he will kill you. So he is quite a powerful being, plus that he's a spirit now. He can easily just travel anywhere around the world, wreaking havoc wherever he goes. But he only really kills people that piss him off. And it's not very often that he actually does get pissed off. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting him into C tier. He's a bit more powerful than D tier because he's a spirit and he can travel much faster than any D tier being could. However, he's not in B tier or even on the left end of C tier, the more powerful end, I should say, of C tier. It's because he won't be able to do much damage to like Henry Senorita or Jolly Hog. So that's why he's in C tier. The viral video. This one's a classic, one of my most famous stories on my channel. However, the viral video is simply just not that powerful. So, it's going into F tier. The reason being is because it's a video. You don't watch it, you won't die, you won't commit suicide. That's the only way the viral video could affect anyone. And if a being watched it, they won't commit suicide. It's not even a physical being or entity. So that's why it's going into F tier. Simple as. I might as well also do the viral video newer at the same time. Now, you're probably thinking it also belongs in F tier. But you'd be wrong. I'm going to be putting it into E tier. And the reason being is because the effects of the viral video newer is a lot worse than the original. If you watch the newer one, it may actually send your soul straight to hell. And there's also a bit of a physical entity involved with it as well. Some say it's Satan himself, some say it's another being or entity. But it doesn't really matter what it is. What I'm saying is there's at least a physical entity involved with the viral video newer. And the effects are quite devastating compared to just committing suicide. I might as well now talk about Figure World as well. Figure World is another cursed video. The last one I'm going to be talking about today, I think. Yeah, it will be. Figure World is quite a scary video. If you watch it, you get taken to Figure World, where the figures there will do eerie things to you. So, it's probably best you don't watch that one. Again, being taken to this world, in my opinion, is worse than being castrated, committing suicide, or even dying by being sent straight to hell. Because like I said, you don't want to know what those eerie things are. But again, the only way it really affects you is if you watch the video. So for that reason, I'm putting it into E tier. However, I do believe it's the most powerful of the E tier list. Mr. Heinz! Now, if he didn't have his tins of beans, he wouldn't even be here at all, let alone on F tier. But because he has the most powerful weapon of all time, a weapon of mass destruction, I'm going to be putting him all the way into B tier. Because those tin of beans can even wreak havoc on Girthgod. It may not necessarily kill Girthgod or anything, but it can disrupt his playstyle. Disrupt him in a way, if you know what I mean. And Big Tim, even Big Tim, fears tins of beans because they do so much damage. It would even hurt Big Tim for a while. Like I said, the same with any god like Girthgod. It would just hurt them. Not necessarily kill them, but it would definitely stun them for a while. So for that reason, I'm putting Mr. Heinz into B tier. The reason he's not getting A tier or God tier, a god would just simply snap him out of existence. It's as simple as. And being like Big Tim, for example, any other A tier being would simply just wipe him clean. Would just snap him. Do the same thing, essentially. So you get the point. So for that reason, Mr. Heinz gets B tier. Verbuta. A very powerful being can just boot you out of a server just like that. So powerful. In fact, Verbuta is the first being that I'm going to be putting into A tier. And the reason being is, like I said, Verbuta will just boot anyone and any being out of its server if he wanted to. It's just as simple as that. Verbuta is very, very powerful. Mr. Head, a very terrifying and powerful being that will give anyone head and make them rot until they die. A very powerful being who will also just eat your rotten corpse whole. He gets B tier, and he's on the more powerful side of B tier because he can easily wipe clean a lot of other beings by simply eating their rotten corpses whole. Mr. Head has also been around for 420 billion years, and I forgot to mention earlier, Verbuta has been around for around 469 billion years. So for that reason, Mr. Head gets B tier. Banter clause. I'm going to be putting it honestly, banter clause is just not that powerful. But he is still a physical being that can do harm to you. Although the odds of him doing harm to you is actually quite slim. He struggles most of the time to do harm. He just dishes out banter, which he may or may not die from. So I'm going to be putting him into E tier. He doesn't get F tier only because he is still a physical being that can harm you randomly. There's still a chance that no matter what you do, you will still encounter him and you will still be harmed by him. The Caretaker. Quite a powerful being. However, not ridiculously powerful. He doesn't go around killing people that often at all, unless if you refuse to do what he says once he's become your daddy. And he'll only become your daddy if you go out of your way to make him your daddy by asking him questions. But maybe some people even want to be his daddy. Some people may want him to be your daddy, because he may take care of you. Once he is your daddy, if you do as he says, he will take care of you. He will suck your penis dry, or your vagina, like sucking all the liquid out of it. He will suck all on those balls. He will take good care, kissing them, shaving them, eating all the arse crack hairs that may be on your arse for you, shaving your chest for you. You will eat his hair as he asks. You have to do the sexual things to him as well if he asks you to. But maybe that's what you like. Maybe you want to do those sexual things to him. If you don't, he will just shove a rake up your ass and that's how you die. Maybe you want a rake shoved up your ass. So some people enjoy that, you know. But he's not like a mythical being or anything. And the odds of actually dying to him is quite rare. You may actually enjoy the experience. Like another being I'm going to be talking about a bit later on in this video. So I'm going to be putting him into D tier. He's more powerful than a banter clause, for example, because he's got a lot of vast knowledge about the world. Girth God. Well, it's quite self-explanatory. He's a god, an infinite dimensional being, so he's going into god tier. There's not really much else I could say about him except the fact that he's a god. He can wipe anything out. He can control your own mind. He can erase memories. He can vaporize anything to death. So for that reason, he goes into god tier. Boyman! A very powerful being that will vaporize anything to death with his oys. He's also been around for so long that I can only say that he's been around for an oi amount of time. He's not quite an A tier being, no, so I'm going to be putting him into B tier. But he is by far the most powerful B tier being that is out there. You do not want to fuck with Oi Man. You don't want to oi him away, because he will oi you to death! Oi! Moving on, before we get a bit too powerful here. Mr. Burnt. Again, a being that's no longer alive. He was burnt to death in 603 BC in ancient Japan for being too Chinese. He is still quite a powerful being. He is, yet again, a guardian in a way, but also not. If you see him, that's it, you're basically dead. He'll burn you to death with his super hot eyes. He is quite a powerful being, though. Not quite B tier, extremely powerful. He won't be able to just wipe out the whole world like Oi Man could. But he could still do a lot of damage. But he also only really hangs around in China and Japan. But there's still a lot of people that he can kill and harm. So, for that reason, I'm going to be putting him into C tier, along with all these beings here, like Jolly Hog, Money Guy, Henry, Senorita. Water Guy. Now, Water Guy is yet again an extremely powerful being, can control not just water, by the way, but any liquid. And he's also very powerful on land, so don't be fooled. If you spot him, he will chase you until you die and take you to that world where he will vaporize you to death, and you'll be nothing but water vapor. He's so powerful that he's been around forever, essentially, maybe even longer than Verbuta. So for that reason, I'm putting him into A tier. But he's not quite as powerful as Verbuta. But if these two got into a fight, it would be around a 50-50 of who would win. Verbuta could boot him away, for example, but Water Guy would just eventually come back. So who knows? Who do you think would win in a fight? Verbuta or Water Guy? Let me know in the comments down below. Sex God. Again, the same reason as Girth God. Sex God is going into God tier. Now, there's been this debate for a long time of who's more powerful, Girth God or Sex God. Well, here's my opinion on it. In my opinion, Girth God has got more sheer power than Sex God. However, Sex God is a lot sexier than Girth God. So, if Girth God and Sex God got into a raw fight, Girth God would win and vaporize Sex God. However, Sex God, I think, knows that. So Sex God uses that to his power. He does sexual favours and things for Girth God, and in return, Girth God gives Sex God some of his power and girth, which allows these two to exist in unison, in harmony. They both benefit from each other. If this was a biology lesson, they would be in a mutual relationship, I think, or whatever it's called. And Girth God gives Sex God a bit more of his power from when they do their killings and all of that kind of stuff as well. They usually are spotted together. And Girth God technically is also two beings. Girth God has two sides. And Sex God is very good at changing that, if it makes sense. Sex God could turn Girth God from evil to good by doing a lovely sexual favour for Girthgod. Because Sex God and Girthgod can morph into any living being in the world, or even in the multiverse. Now, Big Tim. Now, Big Tim is who I really wanted to talk about here. Big Tim is the most powerful being to ever be created, essentially. The only thing that's really more powerful than him are little gods. Big Tim has the powers of Girthgod and Sex God, and looks similar as well. Big Tim also has an extremely large penis, which his size is unknown. Big Tim has been around for so long that we simply don't know how long he's been around for. Probably more longer than Mr. Head, Verbuta, and Water Guy combined. But he hasn't quite been around for an infinite amount of time. He's not quite Girthgod or Sex God powerful, because he's not a god. And he isn't completely immune to the power of Girth either, despite discharging it himself, and the sex as well. Big Tim is essentially the best bits of Girthgod and Sex God without the god. So for that reason, Big Tim is going into A tier, and he is by far the most powerful A tier being. And no questions asked, Big Tim could beat Verbuta and Water Guy at the same time by simply pounding them to death from behind. Well, not technically to death, just defeat them. So Verbuta and Water Guy would be like, "Daddy, stop! Daddy, chill!" And Big Tim would be like, "Oh, yes." And that's the end of it, basically. They'll do anything that Big Tim asks them to do. Big Tim is the ultimate daddy, really. Even more so than the caretaker. But if Big Tim pounded any human to death, they would die. I mean, it's literally to death. Only certain beings can survive Big Tim's pounding. I'd say B tier and up. Anything in C, D, E, or F tier would simply die to Big Tim's pounding. And that brings me on to the next being. The Cum Monster. Now, I'm going to be putting the Cum Monster into B tier. And here's why. The Cum Monster can't kill anyone, or he can, but only accidentally. He's the only being that doesn't intentionally harm or kill anyone. So you're probably thinking, why is he in B tier? Well, one, like I mentioned before, yes, the Cum Monster can survive a pounding from Big Tim. And in fact, now you know why I put all these beings down here. They would never stand a chance against Big Tim. Or Oi Man. Although Oi Man would not stand a chance against Big Tim either. But I bet you already knew that. The Cum Monster, not only that, is also quite a powerful being overall. He could easily make any of these beings come. I mean, he even makes Big Tim come in a way. But Big Tim is always the dominating power if the Cum Monster and Big Tim are doing sexual things to each other. And Big Tim and the Cum Monster like to work together sometimes as well. But Big Tim does think the Cum Monster is pathetic in a way, because he doesn't kill or harm anyone intentionally. Big Tim likes to harm and kill people. He's an evil being. The Cum Monster just likes to make people feel good in a way. Although before, he did like to try and harm people, but he simply just couldn't do it. Because people wound up enjoying the torture that he was giving them. You know, cock and ball torture! So for that reason, the Cum Monster gets B tier. If he could physically kill anyone through a cock and ball torture session or a sexual session, then he'd be even higher up in the B tier, maybe around here. But as he can't physically harm or kill anyone intentionally, sometimes accidents happen, people die from infection or something, or die when their testicles get squeezed off, or Big Tim pounds them to death, or Mr. Head eats their rotten corpse whole, the Cum Monster won't be killing anyone anytime soon. And Mr. Head and Big Tim kills don't even count anyways. So yeah, for that reason, he's at the end of B tier. I would say he is the weakest of the B tier beings. Now, finally, last but maybe not least, we'll find out in a minute, Willy Wanker. The OG story. The first story I ever did on my channel, actually. The first story ever. back in 18th of June 2017. Over 5 years ago now, I started Willy Wanker. There's 3 Willy Wanker cursed videos. Willy Wanker and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wanker and the Great Glass Elevator, and Willy Wanker and the White House. Willy Wanker is a powerful being, but really, he's just not that powerful. So I'm going to be only putting him into F tier. So unfortunately, in a way, he is last but least in a way. But he is a bit more powerful, actually quite a bit more powerful than the viral video. That is because Willy Wanker, if you watch his curse videos, he will kill you and rape you and wank all over your dead corpse. Or sometimes he will wank you to death. While the viral video, the original one anyways, you just simply commit suicide. Now, being wanked to death isn't as bad as getting teleported to an eerie world where eerie things will happen to you, or being castrated, or being sent straight to hell. But being wanked off to death, or raped and wanked all over, or drowning in his cum, is still a very bad way to go. And it is also worse than simply just committing suicide with a gun or something. Imagine drowning in Willy Wanker's cum. Yeah, exactly. But still, you should definitely fear all of these up here more than Willy Wanker. Because like the viral video, the only way you'll actually be harmed by Willy Wanker is if you watch the cursed videos. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you skip to the end for the final tier list, here it is. But if you watched all the way to the end of this video, then I thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. And goodbye, and I will see you in the next video.